I met a Gypsy.
To talk about the mind games, you and Valentino definitely did not have a good relationship for like probably the entire time that you guys were racing together. Actually, I was speaking of that. This is where some nice research comes in handy. You said that you liked him all the way until you started beating him, and like you lost that respect for him. That must have been the weirdest thing in the world, to go from like being nobody to then beating Rossi, beating him for world championships. You become probably his biggest, like most fierce competitor. Like, what was it like to live through that? And obviously you guys are super cool nowadays, so it's like that's you guys are pretty
yeah, all good.
So it's like full circle. You've got this gift now of looking back at it from this place where like you guys are sweet. But when you look back at that now, what was that rivalry like?
It was hard, to be honest. Not just the rivalry with Valentino, but you know, it wouldn't matter because I raced against Danny and Jorge my whole career, so they've been my toughest rivals for the longest period. But for those couple of years with Valentino, you know, he did make life difficult. He had the media absolutely wrapped around his finger.
The fans.
That
would have been crazy. I did not realise that was as big a deal as what it was, but that would have been gnarly.
Well, we had, you know, Adriana was on the back of the scooter when we go into the box. Several times we had people try and rip us off the bike. Like, while we're riding along on the scooter, they'd literally try and rip you in the arm and take you off the bike. So they'd step out in front of you. They'd do everything to try and make you crash. They would do anything to basically injure you or do something to take you out of the race. Basically, the fans is something that Valentino's never really put a stop to that. You know, when they booze, he's always just like, you know, I'm just going to ride this wave. And as much as that's okay, it's also pretty bad. Some of the stuff they were willing to do, and they'd write shit on my motorhome and all that sort of stuff, so have threats and all sorts of stuff. So in the early years, again, I went from nothing to all of that, and it was like, crap, this is a lot to take on. I still felt like I did quite a good job of just getting on with our racing. I got wound up in it a couple of times that I learnt from, and like I said, I don't think I would ever go back and do it differently. I needed to go through those things to learn. Because I came into it so quickly, I didn't learn it in a progressive way. It was like it was just thrown at me. So I learned about media. I learned about people. It helped me with my racing because I was not soft with people, but I always had a massive amount of guilt. If I just made somebody run wide, I had guilt that I wanted to let them back pass because I'm like, oh, that wasn't a clean pass, you know. I'm not talking about hitting them or anything. If they just went slightly wide because I took their line, I felt guilty. And then riding with Valentino made me realise, okay, I got to stop this. So basically with Valentino, every single time I overtook him, I would try and make him run wide because that's all he ever did to me. My whole career, he would just wait to the last moment, bam, inside, make me stand up or run me wide or do something. So I was like, right, I've just got to return serve and let him know he can't keep doing that because unfortunately I was too nice in the early years, and then, you know, I let people get on top of me in that way. And that was a great part in my career, is I just needed to start being a little bit more selfish, needed to start riding for me a little bit more. And then that basically meant that not necessarily being dirty, I would never ever count myself as being a dirty rider.
Mate, you were the Vince Freeze in MotoGP.
Just sat at the front and just swerved all over the track.
You were just a roadblock.
Just cross rut everywhere.
Vince is actually a nice guy.
Yeah, but
he doesn't ride like a nice guy.
No, he doesn't. He needs to think about things a little bit more, be a little bit more thoughtful. But no, I mean, you know, that really helped me massively going forward. With the rest of my career then, I was a lot more confident in the rider that I was because I didn't have to worry all the time. So, that helped me step a long way forward, was learning from Valentino how to deal with the media, how to deal with riders on track. You'll find a lot of Latin blood, and clearly in America too, they don't mind a bit of contact. They don't mind, you know, trying to swipe you here and there. So letting them know that you're not a pushover is one thing, but I still didn't need to resort to being dirty, you know, to get the job done.
You talk about, I guess, like you are the example of the guy that was just never comfortable in that environment, and you were never drinking the Kool-Aid. You were never like wanting the fame, and then opposite you on the podium or next to you on the podium, you're going 1-2 or 2-1, is the guy in Valentino that seemed to just love that, you know, and there's guys that can deal with it in such a different way, and he seemed to like thrive off that energy and loved having the crowd with him. And was that a trip to be, you guys are in the same class going 1 and 2 or 2 and 1 or whatever it is, and it's like, talk about, you know, there's a bunch of ways to skin a cat. Like, there's a dude that is probably your, like, the antithesis of Casey Stoner is Valentino Rossi, and you guys just fire and ice every single time. Was it like weird for you to like see someone so different from you in that sort of sense as well?
Yes and no, because I'd been with I'd you know, been in the GP class long enough, not necessarily MotoGP against Valentino, but I'd been amongst Europeans that love to celebrate their victories. I mean, they literally have to come up with
like celebration
plans and everything, and I'm like, really? Like, I can't get on board with that, you know. That's expectation and like, yeah, I'm going to win kind of thing, and then they don't. What does it just sit in the crate, you know, for several more races or months until they do win, and then they're like, oh yeah, we planned this. Like, every weekend they have to go and plan what corner they've got to meet them on if they win. You know, they've got to go through this whole thing. It's not just, oh, spur of the moment, yeah, look what's here. It's like they've got to plan this whole thing, and the outfits and I mean, it's a lot to go through just for a little a little celebration. But anyway, each to their own. And I think a lot of Europeans do it to try and sort of do a bit of bravado to sort of say, like, look, I won, I get to do this and show off in front of you and you know, show that you didn't win. And sometimes it affected me, not so much their celebrations, but, you know, the way they go on in the podium, all the rest of it. It's as if they won a world championship, not just a race. And for me, I learned a lot from that and reading the way that they would react to how I would react.
Yeah.
And they used to love seeing when any of their competitors were upset or annoyed or pissed off, but in the end, I learnt very quickly to be happy for my competitors. It was like, hey, today I didn't have it, you did. And they couldn't understand it. I remember Jorge and Danny both staring at me just like puzzled as to how I could be so genuinely happy for them. And they were just like, no, this can't be right. What sort of game are you playing? What mental game? And I was like, no, actually, I take the mental game out of it. I'm literally happy for you because I didn't have it today. Unless they did something real dirty to me that I was a bit upset with it. But generally, they never did because they didn't have to. I had so much respect for my competitors and so much respect for, like, look, I didn't have it on the day. You had it better than me. I've got nothing more to say, so I may as well enjoy the moment and be happy for you. I'm not going to, you know, go back to my team and go, yeah, I'm really happy with second or third, you know.
But you could be genuinely happy. But I could be genuinely happy
for them. And they did not understand it. So the moment I did that, and that's what I'm talking about in Supercross, don't make enemies. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Yeah. You don't need to go and make enemies. And if you've got more friends in the class, less problems you're going to have. You know, you show a front wheel, they're not going to close you down.
Yeah.
They show a front wheel to you, they're not going to put you over the barriers. You know, it's pretty clear. So I think, you know, that aspect, I was able to get around that whole thing with my competitors, and then basically we formed basically a big respect for each other. It sort of didn't matter who won on the weekend. We still weren't lying down, but maybe we weren't giving people what they wanted in the big feuds and all the rest of it. But we'd still throw down on the weekend. But you know, we'd show respect to their fellow competitors.
And I guess that could then probably lead itself to the annoyance with the media, is that when there was you weren't giving them any storylines, then there's nothing left for them to do but to like just kind of fabricate some shit, and then you get dragged into.
I was the worst thing in the world for MotoGP. Yeah.
Really, in that sense?
Well, in that sense, you know, you're basically saying they've got no headlines each week.
Yeah.
So, you know, we still had some
and if it bleeds,
great
it
races.
leads.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I'm quite proud of that, to be honest.
Yeah, kept your nose clean the whole time.
Not in the early years, but yeah, in the later years, I learned a lot.
So when did you and Valentino squash the beef, so to say? Like, when did it start to come around? And was it like you genuinely didn't like him, or did you genuinely not like racing him and being around him? Because I guess it could be really hard to know him outside of that.
It was very hard to know him outside of that, and I know certain people that do know him. And what annoyed me about Valentino was that this was all just at me, or just at his competitors. It didn't need to be. We could have shown each other respect. I showed him respect. He didn't show any to me. So that's when I started getting quite pissed off, and I'm like, right, well, I'm going to make your life hell then. Just as much as you've tried to make mine, I will make sure that you're going to struggle as well. So I did everything I could, learn as much as I could in the media, got really friendly with a lot of the media as well, so they stopped writing as much shit about me. And so, like I said, I learnt a lot from Valentino, and I dare say as Valentino as a guy was probably fine. And he was fine with me before I raced him. But then as soon as I became a competitor, he literally just flipped a switch and went, I'm going to, try and make an enemy out of you. And it's one thing that I've been saying lately, the worst thing he ever did was make enemies. Because, well, all of his later enemies, his early enemies he defeated. They weren't as tough as us to come through. But he made an enemy out of me and Mark, and two people that he really shouldn't have, in my opinion. He tried to poke holes with Mark and everything, and they got along well at the beginning. Then he became a competitor. Then all of a sudden, he made an enemy of Mark, and Mark caused him a lot of problems. And may have even cost him a championship in the end. So it's that whole thing, don't make enemies where you don't need to. As much as you think it's doing the right thing and getting in people's heads, at the same time, if it doesn't work, like it didn't with certain riders, I tell you what, it's the worst thing you could ever do. Because then those people just want to make sure you don't succeed. Even if it's not about them succeeding, they want to make sure you don't. They don't want you to have your time in the spotlight. So they will go out of their way to do it. So be very careful about those sort of things.
And so to play the other side of the court then, so you're Valentino, like, why do it?
I think it's because in the past he had such a presence that he could do it. No offense to the competitors before us, basically, but he could get in their heads. He would go up and the things he used to say and everything, it would make them fragile. But
but you guys with me, it come doesn't. Up seeing that and seeing it for what it is in a way. Not
really, because so many people already were nervous going into that class because of Valentino's presence and all the rest of it. You're going in there with a guy with presence. You're not going in there to go and beat that guy. It's like, well, frick, we all grew up thinking Valentino was nearly unbeatable. My career, I thought, man, if I can win one or two races, in a year, bloody hell, that's awesome.
That's so crazy.
I had to keep changing my goals as I got closer to MotoGP. I went, well, I'm realistic here. I don't think I can go to the top. I'm just going to try and do my best and win the occasional race. Try and get some podiums and pretty much finish second or third in the championship. Not necessarily beat Valentino. And then get there and realise, oh no, I can beat this guy. So then, that's when the battles and everything started. So, but I think, the competitors before us, Valentino was in their heads. And they couldn't get him out, basically.
Kind of like when Bruce Irons came and finally beat Kelly Slater. It's like no one could. Like, it takes someone to step up and be like...
And show it.
Just literally get in the dude's face and be like, fuck you, bro, I can beat you, Because it kind of, I guess that's sort of what it takes to dethrone somebody. Because that's what... at the level of Rossi, it's like you're dethroning the king.
To a certain degree, yes. It depends on how you're coming in and viewing it. Again, it's the whole, blowing up the hype and all that sort of thing. For me, I'm very much of a realist, and it was just like I was just worried about me. I wasn't worried about who I had to beat going into a weekend. I didn't visualize anything. I didn't do anything like that. It was like, right, let's just go to work. And if it came to us, great. If not, we worked for it. And I think that's the thing that probably annoyed so many people, and maybe even annoyed Valentino, is that I didn't hype it up.
Yeah, you didn't give him the respect that he thought he deserved.
It's not that I didn't give a crap. It's just, though, that realistically I didn't. It's always been about me versus me. And unfortunately, I have to race other people, so it's me versus other people. But the reason I was always upset after races and things like that, it's normally, it wasn't me. Like, I was annoyed at me and what I did wrong, and that's all I was thinking about was the things I could have done better, and trying to make sure I didn't make those mistakes again. But yeah, it just didn't really matter to me. It was whoever on the day I was racing. Didn't matter whether it was Valentino or Jorge or Danny, and you know, a lot of respect for the other riders, but it was those three guys that I was racing. You know, most of my MotoGP career was just us three on repeat sort of thing. So it was nice to know my competitors. But yeah, like I said, it was sort of whoever I was racing that year or that weekend, rather than, you know, looking at somebody up on a pedestal.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.